everybody. Welcome back to a brand new video of PJ Codes. I know I've been away for a little while, but I'm back. Now, in this video, we're going to be using the HTML range element along with the HTML meter element, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to start with the value of 0 and go all the way up to 100, and we're going to be I'm going to basically show you guys how to use the value from this range and inject it as the value of this meter element, okay? So basically what we're doing here is we're representing our JavaScript skills from a score of 0 to 100. And if you notice, as soon as we reach the score of 60, our color goes from yellow to green. Okay, and then as we progress, as soon as we hit a score of 90, it changes back to yellow. Okay, and I'm going to show you guys why that is, but you got to stick around till the end. All right, so now let's jump into the code. All right, guys, so first things first, what we're going to do is, since we're using VS Code, VS Code has this pretty neat, handy autocomplete feature where you can just do HTML and you can just select HTML5 boilerplate. So boilerplate is an extension that you can just download. It's called HTML5 boilerplate. Hit enter, and it's going to give you a full scaffold of HTML. Okay, so what we're going to do here is, so as we see here, inside our head tag, we see our meta fields, our meta tags that basically will dictate to from the IDE, which is the interactive development environment, to our browser. These guys here, if you don't know, are going to dictate different rules on how to display your all your code into your browser. Okay, this guy here, even the meta tag here, this is for responsiveness. Okay, and this guy here is going to be for SEO related content. Okay, so we don't really need these, and we can even get rid of our link, which is we would typically use this to link our CSS style sheet. And remember, for those of you who don't know what a style sheet is, a style sheet is just basically a different file that holds all your CSS rules for your HTML file. Okay, and again, CSS is a styling language that allows you to style your web page. Okay, so this guy here, we're gonna actually copy this script tag and we're gonna move it up to our head tag because since we already have the defer, we don't even need this async. We just need the defer. I like to put single quotes, and we're just gonna call our app.js, okay, which is gonna be this guy here. Again, this guy, this script tag is used to link different JavaScript files into your HTML, okay? So now inside our body tag, let's just test it out. Let's just do, let's put an H1. Let's just do hello world. Let's hit save. Okay, there we go. I have a live server running, but I just had to hit refresh for some reason. Let's just test it out. Okay, there we go. And likewise, let's now go into our app.js and let's just do console.log. Hello. Let's hit save, and there we go. We see our log here. Okay, so our app.js works. Now what we want to do is, first things first, we want to let's just put an H1 saying, and H1 is a header again. For those of you who don't know, it's the largest text size available for an actual header, a heading. Let's just put number meter. Okay, we're just gonna represent our. Actually, you know what? We can call it skills meter. Skills meter. Okay. And for those of you who don't have live reload, you can check out the live reload Visual Studio Code extension. Very easy to download and install. Okay. All right. So going beneath here, we're going to let's put an H3 here, and let's just call it set skill score. Okay. And now this is going to represent basically the input range. Okay, where the actual range that we're going to use to set the score. All right, so for that, let's declare an input field, input tag, and let's give it a type of range. Okay, and let's give it an ID of range setter. Okay, this unique ID is what we're going to use to call it from our JavaScript file. Okay, and again, remember that an ID is basically unique to each element. So this input can only have this ID of range setter. No other HTML element can ever have this same ID. Okay, that's the whole purpose of IDs. Okay, so now let's give it a value, a current value of 0, or we can call it an initial value. Okay, and let's give it a minimum, because we have to tell our range what the minimum is. Let's give it a max of 100. Okay, and let's just close it up. So that's going to be our range. Let's hit save, and there we go. Now we have our range element. Okay, so that's good. All right, guys. So now since we have our range element down, let's just put a BR here, and BR is going to represent a line break. I don't want to actually sit in style and add like a padding bottom or a margin bottom to this range, so I'm just hard coding an actual space. And again, for those of you who don't know, a BR here on line 29 just represents a line break. So just for example, if I were to do wow, if I were to do blah blah blah, you see there's a little bit of padding between my supposed p tag and that range slider. Now if I were to add another one, you see how double the space? Okay, so that's all I'm doing here. Okay, forgive me for those of you who actually know what all this is, but I also have to keep in mind for people who don't understand this stuff. So now let's add a heading called JavaScript skills. Okay, and this is just basically gonna be a little title. So let's add a span tag inside of it, and let's call it let's do score. Let's do 0. Okay, that's going to be our initial score, and out of 100. And we're going to give this guy an ID, again, single quotes, of score. Okay, so what I did here, what I'm doing here is basically I have a heading, okay, call it, which is an H3. All right, and inside of it, I have basically a nested span tag with an ID of score, which I'm going to target to basically change. Okay, so as I keep sliding this number, the slider, excuse me, I'm going to take the initial value and inject it into this guy here. So whatever, say if it's 40, right? Say if our current range is 40, it's going to display this. So JavaScript is going to basically inject the number 40, which is the current value, in place of the 0 here. And outside of it, we continue with our H3, and we just wrote out of 100. All right, so let's hit save. So right now, obviously, you see it's not working, but this is why we need the JavaScript. Okay, but beneath that, before we even move further, let's introduce our meter tag, our meter ID. So let's just do meter, and actually let's do ID of, let's give it a num meter. So original. Let's give it a minimum a value of 0, just like our range slider, and let's give it a maximum of 100. And what we're going to do is we're going to give it an attribute called low. All right, so we're going to define a low of 60. Okay, that's going to be our low. And our high, let's give it another attribute called high, excuse me. And our high is going to be 90. Okay, so does this ring a bell? When I showed you guys like as I was sliding this range slider here in the input in the beginning of the video, the color changed from yellow to green, and back and forth. So that's exactly what is going on there. Okay, let's just close this guy up. And actually, let's just give it another attribute called optimum, and we're gonna get to this in a moment. Let's just give it an optimum of 85. I don't know why I keep doing that. Okay, let's give it an optimum of 85. I'm gonna get back to this attribute. I'll explain more about that later, okay? And let's just close up our meter tag, okay? So let's hit save. And before we even do that, what we can do is just for readability, let's just add some styling here. So let's give it a style. Okay, and let's target our num meter. Let's give our num meter width of 100 pixels and a height of, let's say, 40 pixels. Okay. Oh, 100%, excuse me. All right, and height of 40 pixels. Okay, There we go. So now we've got that here. Now let's go into our JavaScript, okay? And let's do window dot onload. Okay, we're gonna set that equal to an arrow function. Okay, and this is gonna basically tell the browser like, hey, when the window loads, every time the window loads, we're gonna execute everything that's inside this function here. Okay. All right. So now let's target. Let's first things first. Let's target our num meter, which is our let's just start calling all these guys here. Okay, so let's just do let num meter. Actually, you know what? All right, so let's just start by calling all our elements. We're going to call our range setter, which is this guy here. Then we're going to call our meter, and then we're going to call the actual skill score, which is this guy here. All right, so the score actually. Yep. All right, so let's just do let range setter equal document dot get element by ID. Okay, we're gonna do single quotes range setter. So we're gonna call this ID here range setter. Okay, so this is gonna call our slider. Okay, and then likewise, let's call our num meter. So let's just do let meter equals document dot get element by ID single quotes again num meter. Okay, notice that I'm using let instead of var. Okay, let is basically the new ES6 way of declaring variables. Okay, and if you notice, document.get element by ID. Keep in mind the syntax here, lowercase d. I know a lot of people make the mistake of doing that. Just keep that in mind. Okay, and lastly, let's call our score here. So let's just do let score equals, or we can call it skill score. I like to be specific. Always be specific when naming your variables, but not like crazy specific where you have like num meter in, some crazy name. So just be mindful of that. Okay, and let's just copy that. And so now we have our three elements that we're targeting. Okay, so now notice this. Ready? So what we're gonna do is our first uh, our first task is going to be capturing the value as we slide this guy here. All right, so that's going to be our range setter. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to add an event listener to this guy here, to this input, which is our range setter. Okay, and the way we do that is just do range setter dot add event listener. Now, what if I know what you're thinking? Change, right? Let's just see what happens when we do change on change. Okay, and let's give it an input, an event, excuse me, and let's just log it. Okay, console.log e.target.value. Okay, I don't know why that odd space happened. So what's gonna happen here? We want our value to constantly show, right? Instead of, see how it's happening only on mouse up, okay? We don't want that. I mean, we could, but then that's gonna be so laggy, right? So what we want is a change called input. Okay, so now if we do input, you see that? Okay, so why use on input versus on change? Okay, so on change will give us the input, uh, it will give us the value every time this element loses focus. So only when we see how the color. So now I click down and the color changed. So now it has focus, right? So now the value, it's getting the new value. As soon as I drop the focus, boom, now it updates with the new value. So it starts getting the value when the focus is on, and it basically releases the value as soon as it loses focus. Okay, what input does is basically gives us the value as the the actual element receives new input. So as we're sliding, this HTML element is receiving new input every time. So which is what we see. Okay, and it updates it in real time. So we can go all the way back to our up to our max value and all the way back to our minimum value. Okay, so that's what we're going to actually leverage to inject this value into our meter. Okay, hope that made sense. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take our meter attribute. Very simple, guys. We're almost done. So we're just going to do meter dot set attribute. We're going to give it an attribute of value, and you guessed it, we're just going to do e dot, let me move that out of the way, target dot value, okay, which is going to be this guy here. Okay, so now if we hit save, now you're going to see, boom, there you go. Now when we hit 60, it changes from green to yellow, and which is our minimum. And now as soon as we hit 90 here, which is our high, it's going to change again. Okay, there we go. Now we're at 90. But if you've noticed, our skills number is not changing. So for that, all we need to do is just need to add some inner HTML of e.target.value, semicolon, always put your semicolon, and there we go. Okay. There are a million different reasons why you can use this. Say you're building a dashboard of, I don't know, for an education portal, and you're setting a score for a student. You set the score based on the test to say 84, and you can do different various displays of the different scores. So instead of JavaScript, this can be like math score for the region's final, for an 86. I'm just shooting in the dark here. There are many different use cases. Use your imagination, and hopefully, if you got lucky, this is your exact use case or related use case for something that you're currently working on. But I hope this helped, and if you guys have any suggestions or questions, definitely reach out. And if not, I will see you guys in the next class. And thanks for watching. Bye.